Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today's episode of Sue's Healthy Minutes is going to be a little different. I'm actually going to read excerpts from a book written nearly 100 years ago. The book, A Treatise on Bread and Bread Making, was written in 1837 by Sylvester Graham. It is absolutely amazing how his words still ring true today. In fact, I can almost hear these words coming from my own mouth through my presentations, and I have often quoted from his writings in my teaching. But today, I'm going to read directly from the book, even beginning with his preface. But before I begin, I want to give you just a little background information about Sylvester Graham. He was the 17th child of the Reverend John Graham Jr. Sylvester decided to follow in the footsteps of both his father and grandfather and pursue the ministry. But out of concern for his own health issues, he became an avid student of human physiology and nutrition and came to be known as a clergyman physician. With commercially processed white flour gaining popularity, yes, even 100 years ago, Sylvester Graham became quite the advocate of freshly milled whole grain flour, giving lectures on health and nutrition and developing what came to be known as the Graham system. His teachings inspired the creation of Graham flour, Graham bread, and Graham crackers, all made from freshly milled wheat flour with all the brand and germ intact. Though the Graham crackers that many know and love today are attributed to his name, they unfortunately share none of the same health benefits as those of Sylvester Graham's day. While many of Sylvester Graham's teachings are a bit dogmatic and eccentric, his passion for good health through real bread cannot be denied. The tenants in his boarding houses, where only bread made from freshly milled coarse wheat flour, as he called it, was served, experienced noticeably better health when compared to others. And so his respect grew despite the animosity and ridicule aimed at him from commercial bakers who didn't like the fact that he decried their popular white flour loaves of bread. So today, I will read directly from A Treatise on Bread and Bread Making by Sylvester Graham. Beginning now with the preface, I will read. There are probably few people in civilized life who, were the question put to them directly, would not say that they consider bread one of the most, if not the most important article of diet which enters into the food of man. And yet there is in reality almost a total and universal carelessness about the character of bread. Thousands in civic life will, for years and perhaps as long as they live, eat the most miserable trash that can be imagined in the form of bread, and never seem to think that they can possibly have anything better, nor even that it is an evil to eat such vile stuff as they do. And if there is occasionally an individual who has trouble with some conviction that his bread is not quite what it should be, he knows not how to remedy the difficulty. For it is a serious truth that although nearly every human being in civilized life eats bread of some kind or another, yet scarcely anyone has sufficient knowledge of the true principles and processes concerned in bread making and of the actual causes of the bad qualities of bread, to know how, with any degree of certainty, to avoid bad and secure good bread. I have thought, therefore, that I could hardly do society a better service than to publish the following treatise on a subject which, whether people are aware of it or not, is in reality of very great importance to the health and comfort of everyone. It has been prepared for the press with more haste, under more embarrassments from other engagements, and with less severity of revision than I could wish. Yet whatever may be its defects of arrangement, method, or style, I have taken care to have the principles correct and the instructions such as, if attended to, will enable every one who is heartily devoted to the object to make good bread. I must, however, acknowledge that I have very little expectation that proper attention will be paid to this subject so long as the dietetic habits of society continue to be what they are. While the various preparations of animal food constitute so important a portion of human ailment, the quality of bread will be greatly disregarded and neglected, and people will continue almost universally to be cursed with poor bread. I will leave the final 2 paragraphs of his preface to read at the end of today's podcast. I will now skip to his chapter entitled Properties of Bread. It's a bit longer, of course, than the preface, but as I read verbatim from his writings, though some of the language is dated, I think you will find it equally as relevant today. So now I will read on the properties of bread by Sylvester Graham. Whether our bread is of domestic manufacture or made by the public baker, that which is made of superfine flour is always far less wholesome in any and every situation of life than that which is made of wheaten meal, which contains all the natural properties of the grain. It is true that when much flesh is eaten with our bread, or when bread constitutes but a very small and unimportant portion of our food, the injurious effects of superfine flour are not always so immediate and distinctly perceived as in other cases. Nevertheless, it is a general and invariable law of nature that all concentrated forms of food are unfriendly to the physiological or vital interest of our bodies. A very large portion of all the diseases and ailments in civic life are originated by causes which are introduced into the alimentary canal as articles of diet, and disturbances and derangement of function, obstruction, debility, and irritations are among the most important elements of those diseases. It is probably speaking within bounds to say that 9/10 of the adults and nearly as large a proportion of youth in civic life are more or less afflicted with obstructions and disturbances in the stomach and bowels and other organs of the abdomen, the symptoms of which are either habitual costiveness or diarrhea, or an alternation of both, or frequent and severe attacks of what are called bilious colics, and in children and youth, worms, fits, and convulsions. And I cannot but feel confident that the use of superfine flour bread is among the important causes of these numerous and other difficulties. I have indeed been surprised to observe that in the hundreds of cases of chronic diseases of every form and name which have come to my knowledge within the last 5 or 6 years, costiveness of the bowels has in almost every incident been among the first and most important symptom, and I have never known this difficulty, even after obstinate continuance of 5, 10, 20, or 30 years, fail to disappear in a short time after the coarse wheaten bread of a proper character has been substituted for that made of super fine flour. Some physicians and other individuals, without properly examining the subject, have raised several objections against the coarse wheaten bread. It is said in the first place that bran is wholly indigestible and therefore should never be taken into the human stomach. This objection betrays so much ignorance of the final causes and constitutional laws, it clearly indicated by the anatomical structure and physiological economy of the alimentary organs, that it scarcely deserves the slightest notion. If the digestive organs of man were designed to receive nothing but digestible and nutrient substances, they would have been constructed and arranged very differently from what they are. As we have already seen, everything which nature provides for our sustenance consists of certain proportions of nutritious and innutritious matter. And a due proportion of innutritious matter in our food is as essential to the health and functional integrity of our alimentary organs as a due proportion of nutritious matter is to the sustenance of the body. Another objection is that although bran may serve like other mechanical irritants and excitants for a while to relieve constipation, yet it soon wears out the excitability of the organs and leaves them more inactive than before. Here again, a false statement is urged by inexcusable ignorance, for it is not true that the bran acts in the manner supposed in this objection, nor are the effects here asserted ever produced by it. A third objection is that though the coarse wheaten bread may do very well for those who are troubled with constipation by mechanically irritating and exciting the stomach and bowels, yet for that very reason it is wholly unfit and improper for those who are afflicted with chronic diarrhea. Here is still another objection founded in ignorance of the true physiological and pathological principles which it involves. The truth is that the coarse wheaten bread, under a proper general regimen, is as excellent and sure a remedy for chronic diarrhea as for chronic constipation. I have seen cases of chronic diarrhea of the most obstinate character, and which had baffled the highest medical skill and every mode of treatment for more than 20 years, yielding entirely under a proper general regimen in which this bread was the most exclusive article of food and not a particle of medicine was used. And I have never known such a mode of treatment to fail of wholly relieving diarrhea, whether recent or chronic, although a very great number of cases have come under my notice. It is fully evident, therefore, that the bran does not act on the digestive organs as a mere mechanical irritant, for if it did, it would always necessarily aggravate rather than alleviate diarrhea. Nor does it relieve diarrhea on the principle of a narcotic nor of a stimulant, for the effect of these is always to give an immediate check to the complaint, and in such a manner as to expose the system to a return of it. But the coarse wheaten bread seems to increase the disease for a short time at first, and then gradually restores the healthy condition and action of the bowels. The mucilage of wheat bran is probably one of the most soothing substances in the vegetable kingdom that can be applied to the mucous membrane of the stomach and the bowels. Chronic constipation and chronic diarrhea both spring from the same root, where the constitutional vigor of the alimentary canal is very considerable. Continued irritations resulting in debility will produce constipation, and these continued causes operating for some time will often induce such a state of debility and irritability as is attended with diarrhea. And in other cases, when this constitutional vigor of the alimentary canal is much less, diarrhea is far more readily induced and rendered chronic. Coarse wheaten bread, then, by its adaptation to the anatomical structure and to the physiological properties and functional powers of our organs, serves to prevent and to remove the disorders and diseases of our bodies only by preventing and removing irritation and morbid action and condition, and thereby affording the system an opportunity of recovering its healthy and vigorous action and condition. And the thousands of individuals in our own country of every age, of both sexes, of all situations, conditions, and circumstances, who within the last 6 years have benefited by using the coarse wheaten bread instead of that made of superfine flour, are living witnesses of the virtues of that bread. I will stop here in my reading for today, but may share more again another time, as some of the war stories he shares are fascinating. I hope you have enjoyed some of the accounts and findings of Sylvester Graham that I have shared today. I certainly found them enlightening when I discovered this work about 10 years ago. And again, while some of his teachings, like I said earlier, are a bit dogmatic and eccentric, we can all most likely agree with his basic philosophies. He advocated the use of whole wheat for bread, hard mattresses, open windows, fresh fruits and vegetables, pure drinking water, and cheerfulness at meals. Apparently revolutionary ideas at the time. Remember, these ideas by Sylvester Graham were promoted nearly 100 years ago, but surely still sound advice for us today. I will close today with the last 2 paragraphs of his preface, and I read now. Nevertheless, I trust some good will be done by this little work I now send out, and I am not without hope that it will be the means of considerable improvement in the quality of bread, and as a natural and necessary consequence, an improvement in the health and happiness of those who consume it. That it may prove thus beneficial to my fellow creatures in a high degree is my hearty and fervent desire. Signed, Sylvester Graham. I do not think I could have said this better myself, for I share the passion of Sylvester Graham for helping others find better health through real food and real bread. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. As always, I thank you for listening, and until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.